Good afternoon. I wanted to discuss simplicity and complexity in Age of Sigmar, specifically how they relate to, obviously, to Auric War Clans, but to the game more broadly. Okay, so by simplicity, what I mean is, obviously, that when you're taking actions in AOS, the number of options that you're presented with and the intricacy of the procedure of playing through a game is straightforward and simple. So an example of something that would be really simple in AOS would be oh geez, what's simple in this game? Rules like unleash hell, redeploy, forward to victory, like the command points in this game I feel is relatively simple and straightforward. Here's a list of commands that you can use. Here are the phases in which they occur. There's only one or two per phase, and they have very specific triggers and effects and abilities, and they're very straightforward. And complexity, I mean, I don't think I need to, I have to work a little bit to think of some simplistic answers, but I have to also think of, it's not very hard to think of complexity in this game because that is why we all play the game. We all play the game because there's lots of different ways to build your armies, not just with models, but also with enhancements, battalions. There's a lot of other armies. There's a lot of different maps. Seasons change, right? Like, come on, nerds. We're all, like, let's be honest. One of the things that I always say about video games and about games in general is that, yeah, it's not really a game worth considering unless you need to make your own spreadsheets to keep track of it. And that's, like, flippant, but it's also not. You know, MMOs, Magic the Gathering, Age of Sigmar, Dungeons and Dragons, all of my favorite games over time have been exceedingly complicated, so much so that my family questions my sanity. Okay, but obviously a game can't just be infinitely complex. Obviously a game just can't be like more and more complicated all the time because it loses some of its fun at some point. Okay, so here are some things in Age of Sigmar that I think need to be simplified. Here are some things in Age of Sigmar that I think need to be simplified. One thing I think needs to be simplified is profiles. I don't know how you feel, but I personally hate it when I have a single unit and one of their profiles has different like numbers based on which model in the unit is doing it. My favorite example right now is brutes. If you have an army of 5 brutes, or if you have a unit of 5 brutes, there are 3 different profiles that you have to select within that. There's 3 different profiles that you have to roll. So you're like, okay, here's my brutes that have the Hakkas, and then here's my Gore Hakka, and then here's my brute boss. So it's like, you know, I have to go through 3 different phases of rolling when I have a unit of brutes. And to me, that's absurd. It's absolutely absurd. I should be able to point to a model, pick up the dice, and say, here are the rolls for that model. It shouldn't be that difficult. Another thing I think should be simplified is some of our monsters that have multiple, like they have a lot of attack profiles. So a really easy example would be Gobsprakk. Gobsprakk has a Bogart Staff, Flesh, Beak and Talons, a Stinger, and a Backup Stabba. You're rolling 2 dice, 4s and 4s, no rend and 1 damage for a Backup Stabba. Just remove it. I understand the thematic appeal of it. It's like there's this little grot that's hanging out with Gobsprakk, and so he also gets to attack. But just build it in, like Bogart Staff and Backup Stabba together. So give it 3 dice at 3/3/1 D3 instead. It's too much. And other things in Age of Sigmar that I think need to be simplified. I think that the rules that are associated with like unique heroes and named heroes is a little bit complex. There's lots of new players that start playing the game and they're like, oh, like when how do I pick a spell and this and that, and it's like, oh no, well they actually can't get enhancements because they're unique heroes and everything else, and there's a lot of complexity going on with that. That is kind of unnecessary, like it's kind of irrelevant. Yeah, I mean, to be honest, the attack profiles is really the thing that really bugs me. I feel like it takes a lot of time out of the game. And then one last thing that this is something that I think really needs to be fixed in 4th edition. This needs to be simplified, is the hero phase. The problem with the hero phase right now is that it's actually 3 different phases. It's the start of the hero phase, it's the hero phase, and it's the end of the hero phase. I don't think a lot of the only things that really come to mind for the end of the hero phase is the movement of endless spells. And that's like, okay, like the end of the hero phase is whatever, but the beginning of the hero phase, where you're doing your battle tactics, your command traits, and any other triggers that begin at the beginning of the hero phase, I think that needs to be streamlined a little bit. Either they are just all part of the hero phase, or you actually have a separate phase that is at the beginning of the hero phase that's called something different, that has its own rules, right? So it's like, you know, in Magic the Gathering, you have untap, upkeep, and draw step, and things will happen at each one of those intervals, because untapping is relevant. If you have to do something before you untap your mana, that's relevant. If you have to take an action before you draw your card, or if a trigger happens before you draw your card, to me that also seems relevant. So for example, I could say like, okay, there's a hero phase, or there's a phase in the hero phase, right? Like a I don't even know what you would call it, a command phase, let's say, before the hero phase, where, you know, the general can take an action like a heroic action, for example, where anything else that is going to trigger, so like Wargog Prophet wouldn't say at the beginning of the hero phase, it would say in the command phase it gets to do this. And then battle tactics, right? So as a player, you get to really think about like, well, what kind of things am I going to do, or do I get to do in the command phase, and what kind of things do I get to do in the regular hero phase? And it'll allow Games Workshop to separate these things more clearly, and so players who are coming into the game are going to be able to interact with them a little bit better. Pardon me. Okay, so that's simplicity. There are some things in this game that I do believe need to be simplified. Specifically, my 2 big ones are the hero phase and different profiles within a unit. Complexity. So this game is already very complex, and there's a lot happening, but I think there are some areas where more complexity needs to be added. And there's 2 areas in this game that I think we need to increase complexity. And maybe complexity isn't the right word, but the first one is battle tactics. We need 20 more battle tactics. We need a lot more battle tactics. The skill, right now, I feel like there's armies that have, and there's armies that are have-not armies. The armies that, like Big Wa is a good example right now. We can achieve battle tactics every turn very easily. There's a couple that are almost free. The Cruel Boys one, Sneak Up, in a Big Wa army is a free battle tactic. Do you know how easy that battle tactic is to get at any stage of the game? It's so easy. The Iron Jaws one is also relatively easy, but not like a total gimme. And then the Wait For It Lads, where you have to start with 24 wall points and exceed 30 wall points, that's a freebie battle tactic. And it's a freebie battle tactic for a couple of reasons. One, it's very easy to get, right? It's like, okay, well, I have 25 wall points. All I need to do is get 5 wall points. And the second reason it's incredibly easy is that you can achieve it before you even pick it. You can achieve it before you even pick it. Let's say that you start the turn with 24 WA points. Okay, so now we're in the beginning of the hero phase. I'm going to roll my WA points. I get a 6, and now I have 30 points. Boom. I'm not going to call a WA this turn. Sorted. I'm going to choose this one because I've already achieved it. Just by picking it, it's already been accomplished. So, then there's armies that are have-not armies. Like my wife plays Stormcast Eternals, and I know Stormcast super well, and the battle tactics are an absolute disaster. It's very difficult to play. You have to think about your list, and I'm sure you out there know some armies as well where you have, when you're picking your list, you're sort of pigeonholed into certain kinds of units or archetypes or combos and so on, because you're going to have to achieve the battle tactics. So the skill should not be like right now, I don't feel like battle tactics require a ton of skill. I recommend to players that you sit down before the game and you come up with a plan, and then you can pretty much stick to your plan. But that's not how battle tactics should be. I think that they, oh geez, what show was it? I was, oh no, my music. I was checking out just like, I can't remember what they're called. Vince? I can't remember what they're called. I'm desperately, frantically right now trying to... Venturella gave me a shout out the other day, so I'll give him a shout out back. But great channel, definitely check him out. But I was watching, they had this redesigned AOS video, and I was kind of checking it out, and I just... they were talking about battle tactics, and they said, and I knew, like, I felt this way before, but I just totally agreed with them, that the skill of battle tactics, it should be a skill check, a skill test for the player. It's like, there's this very complicated board with these very complicated rules, and there's 30 different battle tactics, and the skill is picking the right one. The skill is picking the battle tactic that you're going to be able to achieve, and is also in line with a good overall strategy for what you're seeing on the board. So, for example, you're playing Big Wa, you have a Maw Crusher, they have exposed their backline, and there's a tiny little wizard in the back that needs to die. So you choose a battle tech that says you kill a Locust this turn. You identify on the table what it is that has to happen for you to get an advantage, and then you choose a corresponding battle tactic that works with that. It should be a skill to pick the right battle tactic from a sea of them, from a lot of different ones. Or at least that's what I think. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Another thing that needs, along the same lines, another thing that needs to be increased in complexity is enhancements. I think that a lot of armies have enhancements that are good, and lots of armies have enhancements that are trash, and I think there just needs to be a lot more of them. Like when you're designing a book, GW, just throw a ton of stuff at the wall and see what sticks. If I only come up with 3 command traits, there's the chance that all of them are duds and there's nothing to do increases. But if I throw like 10 command traits at the wall, the probability that there's going to be at least 2 or 3 that stick and will be interesting to choose from goes up significantly. It's the same idea with battle tactics. You just throw more out there. The ones that are good, you keep. The ones that aren't good, you get rid of and replace later. Yeah, I mean, it's what I've always said about Cruel Boys is that when Cruel Boys get a redesign, when Cruel Boys get a rewrite, they should just take all the things that were working and build them into the core rules of the game. Like Grin and Blades, that the invisible outside of 12 inches should just be part of the Cruel Boys army. The Super Sneaky should just be a rule in Cruel Boys, and then write a bunch of new command traits and see what happens. That'd be a very easy way to increase the power level. Keep what's working, and then throw a whole bunch more at the wall. Anyway, let me know what you think. And after you do that, be sure to like, subscribe, and wah! And wah!